Tech art team here is made up of 2 people. This month they worked on a tool for both cinematic and gameplay animators to quickly render out previews of their work within Maya. The tool allows the animators to quickly offload the rendering to a different PC so they can continue work on their own PC. The renders are an essential part of our review process here so that the global teams can have an eye on everyone's progress across all the studios. They worked on numerous other small tasks as well, such as skinning of cloth, automated file testing within Maya, and supporting the weapons team, to name a few. Cinematics team is focusing on telling the rich story of Squadron 42, as we all know. The team is making great progress putting scenes of various sizes together. They continuously work across multiple disciplines to get the final look and feel that they're after, such as the character team for our A-list cast of characters, UI and art teams on specific visuals, and the VFX team on unique atmosphere and effects. The FPS team has been focusing on giving a final polish pass for the Bearing and Klaus and Werner weapons, as well as a new double-barrel ballistic shotgun from the Kostak Arms. The ship weapon guys have been focusing their time on finalizing the pipeline for the new modular and upgradable system, which, when completed, will allow us to more flexibility and efficiency when we're moving forward and creating the variety that we're after. They've also been working with the system designers on a brand new oxygen breathing system and the visuals attached to it. The visuals are tied to the player losing a portion of their oxygen over time for various reasons. The system is still incredibly early in its development and may change, but it's so far showing good progress. Here I've been working with programming to get the player and the AI both interacting with the same usable, and to intelligently be able to use other objects inside that usable. For example, sitting down at a table, picking up a cup, drinking from it, using a knife and fork, picking a grenade or gun from a locker, etc. They also worked on getting all the Squadron 42 character subsumption behaviors standardized across the board. The level design team is continuing its push on the modular locations. For the surface outposts, we're looking into the first 3 variants: hydroponics, mining, and storage. And just as with our other locations, both the exterior and the interior props are modular and can be combined into many different variants. This is the only image they gave me to use for now. We'll have a more in-depth look into their recent work in the near future, and they didn't want me to spoil it. For the engine team, it's been a busy few weeks for them as they continue on a daily basis to push on the planetary tech. Some of the recent work on planetary tech was planetary clouds. For one, the texture LOD computations for cloud details were revised in order to reduce aliasing and shimmering artifacts in the distance. We also included support for simple cloud animation, which we'll see further improvements on in the future. For alien planets, there's now also an option to tint clouds. Work also started on our solar system editor, which is the first version and it's almost complete. It allows us to set up solar systems in their initial state, drag in planets as object containers, configure their orbits around the sun, set up moons orbiting around planets, etc. It's an essential tool that we found out due to the size that we're working with and the amount of objects that we have. A lot of progress on the procedural moons around Crusader. Each moon has its own distinct look and feel. A lot of effort has gone into making each one unique, at the same time visually keeping them tied to the same family per se. The work on the different ecosystems for these moons is now complete, and the team is currently working on refining the geological elements that will be found on each separate moon. We're excited for players to eventually visit the 3 moons, Yela, Daymar, and Selen, by flying seamlessly from space to the procedural planet's surface. The development of a procedural tech is ongoing, and with a growing team of artists using it on a daily basis and working GUID. The super GUID is a way to connect a variable in subsumption to an object in the world that has a specific structure to it. For example, in Crusader, we have one made object container, the function visualizer. This tool allows us to debug live mission and behavioral logic, allowing us to modify in real time the variable of
Started war at the 7th year. Direct shield, spell death for U.E.E. Davies.
The Hurricane provided a unique solution. If you can't go through the shields, go around them. By the time the ship had been produced in significant numbers, Korathal and the rest of his fleet had burned in the atmosphere of Elysium 4, so these warships found themselves without a war. Although it continued to serve in rotation, the Hurricane fell out of common usage and was eventually eliminated from the fleet. When Anvil Aerospace began looking into new ships in 2867, the Vanduul was slowly pressing into the Caliban system in a manner reminiscent of the pushes that precipitated the attacks on Tiber and Virgil 100 years earlier. To stem these raids, they revisited the original Casa Aerospace hull designs and began looking into updating the Hurricane for the modern age.
The Hurricane was and when it came time to revisit that concept and get the design really started, we keyed in on the turret as being this really important aspect of this ship.
Like the rough dimensions of the ship. I knew the Hurricane needed to be about 22 meters long. I know that it's a fighter that's going to have a pilot and one gunner. I know it's going to have to accommodate 6 guns, a couple guns on the front, and it's going to have a manned turret with 4 guns on it. There are various things, and I also know it's going to need to incorporate a particular pilot entry animation, in this case the gladiator animation. I take all of that information, try to fit a visual design around it.
In building out our ships, we've been moving toward Leader and the Hurricane were, kin, and we took advantage of that to accelerate the process of building out this ship, because we can take a lot of the similar design cues for that entrance for the pilot and the turret, although they are much further apart than they are in the Gladiator, where they're bunk buddies. But
when I take a first pass at the design, sometimes I'm taking pieces from the Hornet and pieces from the Gladiator, shoving them together, seeing if I can make a new ship out of those pieces, and I'm trying to inspire myself to think of some new shapes, new looks. So I will put together a batch of really rough either sketches or mock-ups, or I'll call it like a 3D kit bash if it's using existing pieces. I'll send that off to Paul, the art director on this particular project, and we'll take a look at it and we'll see what we like and what we don't, and we'll move forward from there.
This came together around just begun to have its concepts of the directional shield and its lore in the Devaran War and all those things coming together, where the Prowler would present this impenetrable defense and just sort of stroll up and wreck your day. And then someone had the brilliant idea of, what if we shot them from behind? So the Hurricane was about getting those strafing runs, getting to it quickly. So the Hurricane needed to get in fast, and it needed to unload a ton of bullets, a ton of damage onto the Prowler all at once in order to counteract its impressive shield technology. And as sort of a benefit, bringing the Hurricane back in modern times, is that it's pretty effective, and being able to bring pain to people you're running away from. The notion that we had for this glass hammer, as Will calls it, that you run face first into danger and then make them regret following you. The Hurricane is actually pretty underpowered to have reasonable engines and insane weaponry, and everything else had to go. So it's not going to be able to really power. Is that it has some. It's all dedicated to that aggressive notion. You just have to make sure that you win fast, which seemed to go along with the original design idea of this ship.
So with the Hurricane, I think it takes the pre-existing recognizable attributes of Anvil ships, and it simplifies them. Of the Hornet, you can of course see the iconic Anvil circle there in the center. Everything revolves around that. Has the snub nose that is reminiscent of the Gladiator. It takes all these ideas and it gives them a pretty simple silhouette, and it reads pretty well from a distance. So I'm thinking that mostly if you're seeing a Hurricane from a distance, you'll recognize the wings, depending on the color scheme. Maybe you'll recognize the shape that is designed on the top, which is actually reminiscent of the Anvil logo itself. The circle and some of the angles coming off of it. So that's what I hope you notice when you're actually looking at the ship.
It definitely requires a particular kind of gunner to want to fly these things, because you are putting your life in their hands. And to an extent, the pilot as well. Anyone who seeks out the Hurricane to fly.
Which allowed us to build vehicles in a completely modular system, base ship. You can attach turrets or weapons to it, and you can basically build your own customized ship out of it. And we thought, with that system already in place, why don't we take that and use it for character customization, to actually use the same system and be able to have like a base character, which is like basically a naked person, and then put on different armor pieces, different clothing, and even different weapons.
Yeah, so, and one of the tricky parts about that is, with a ship, things are very rigid in terms of you attach this one gun here, there's no real deformation going on, it doesn't have to attach in any super special way, it's like, just align it to that helper and you're pretty much happy. But on the character side, it can become a little more difficult, because we're talking about zones within the character, and everything on a character deforms, everything's skinned to a skeleton.
Costumes are all going to be unique. You're going to have jackets that are going to have to fit over different types of things, armors that are going to have to fit over different types of things, helmets that don't necessarily fit, shoes that don't meet the pants. Like, you have all these kind of problems where it's when it is a deformable and very unique asset, whereas you're saying it's basically
really well. We basically load a skeleton. That particular skeleton is sitting right there. It can animate and do everything it needs. And technically that character is loaded, there's just no actual geometry that's showing it. So in the loadout editor here, you can see that I have an item port, and it's called the body item port. And this is what supports a bunch of different items. So within the items, you can see we've got female bodies, we've got male bodies. So right now I'm just gonna load up one of the male bodies, and we've just got two very different ones in terms of their skin tone. And before I get too much further, I want to attach a head just to show you how we do skeleton extensions, and that the base skeleton actually gets built up upon. So what I do is the body actually carried a whole bunch of item ports with it by itself. Maybe I'll make this a little bigger so you can see it. And the one I'm really interested in is this head item port. So as soon as I select that head item port, it actually tells me what items are valid for that particular port. And we set this all up through types, subtypes, and sort of rules. So you can see we've got a lot of different character heads. And in this case, I'm going to select the male tier 1, male 09 tier 1, which is the one that everybody's kind of used to within the BU. But we'll happily change that around a little bit. So I'm just going to add some eyes onto him, so he gets a little set of eyes. And now let's go ahead and turn off the skeleton debug here. So here's our guy. So he's loaded up, and one of the things that we're working on right before we give you a character creation is this scene between the neck and the body, because we have our heads all scanned from actual people, and our body itself actually wasn't a body scan. This was actually just modeled by one of our very talented character artists. What we have to do is align those two so that there's no seaming in there. And what can be confusing but also very powerful within the situation is the dynamic hierarchy that it kind of creates. So like the port called the armor port.
The way our game is designed is we have the undersuit, and then on top you can like layer different armor plates and so on. And that's also just like another item port on top of the undersuit item port. So I have the undersuit item port, and then I can go and give him like different leg plates here. So I can really customize my character. And since the art is all like set to work with each other, I can now actually even go further and put stuff, attachments on my armor. So there's like different armor item ports here for like grenades, for example. So I put a little grenade in here. So yeah, and I mean, as you can see, this completely allows me to completely customize and randomize my whole player.
Now, initially doing this, of course, some of the assets weren't really set up to be as modular.
Like the zone stuff is that it does actually give us quite a bit of leeway, and I'm going to break down that with you guys in a concept. We can break them down pretty easily. So both of these have a jacket, which is this piece right here. Both of these have shirts, which would be this piece right here. And then we have a pant, Looks like this guy's probably wearing some kind of a glove. We both have boots. Now, this is all exactly what we talked about, right? So this t-shirt, we'll actually be making the t-shirt, if it's a t-shirt or a tank top, all the way into this area. Same with this, if it's a long sleeve or whatever it is. We'll be building it all the way out, but when we put this cardigan on, it'll actually be culled out all the way over here. So all this will go away, which is pretty cool because then we don't have to worry about it. Like we said, we get big performance savings. It's just really actually a lot of freedom for the artist, which is really cool. And one thing we were talking about before, which is actually a challenge, is pants. The challenge is actually where any two zones are going to meet, because that's where you have two things colliding, right? Now let's say I have a pair of boots like this, and I have a pair of short boots or shoes like this. I drag these over, and you'll see that maybe I didn't change these pants out. What's going to actually happen is this would all be skin. Right? The challenge that we have here is that, first off, that looks a little weird, and then second, the model that we made for these pants is built to look like it's tucked into boots. So if we have that problem, now this creates a problem where we have a piece of clothing that we've created that doesn't necessarily fit in all of our scenarios. And we want to make sure that all of our characters are built to be able to fit within a system where it's easily swappable and easily modular. And the biggest thing that I'm actually most excited for this was NPCs. So right now, when you look at any of the NPCs you see, they're all pretty much the same guy, unfortunately. But when we get into randomly spawning them, we'll be able to select from certain types of clothes and certain groups. And because all of our assets will be able to blend seamlessly together, we'll be able to spawn them really quick and really, really easily, because you'll just be able to select from anything, and all the shoes will work with the pants, all the pants will work with the shoes, all the shirts will work with the jackets, etc.
Sometimes we have t-shirts like the one I'm wearing here, but sometimes we have ones that go down past the elbow. And then sometimes we have a full arm shirt, so you don't want to keep drawing all this stuff underneath. And the other tricky part about that is you would think that you would just be able to layer the clothing. Like what ends up happening is you might not get clipping when you're standing, but as soon as the guy animates, boom, it's all popping out everywhere.
Terrible, yeah.
So, and there's never really anything you can do about that if you do not keep your topology consistent, which we don't necessarily have on the shirts because it's a bit restrictive if you have to do that. So with the zone culling coming online up on the third layer that are wide open, so that means what if I don't have that t-shirt on underneath that jacket? I gotta show the chest then, but the t-shirt was culling the chest, so then how do I make sure the chest is there with that?
That we're defining right now as armor is an undersuit. So an undersuit basically means you're going to be able to go into space with it. So you can put on a helmet and you can go into space, EVA, jet around, and you should be fine.
So an undersuit is kind of your
it's almost
chest.
like a, it's like a chest.
Yeah, it's like a frame.
So what that does is it puts on, and you can still see the player's head, hair, face, all that kind of stuff. But then on top of that, now you put your helmets, and you put your chest pieces, your arm pieces, and your leg pieces. So right now we've split it up into 4 because it's just easy to assemble. It's easy within
these character items. So this is all part of the item 2.0 entries that we've talked about with the community quite a bit. So we have all these items that are all predefined, but within those items there can be gameplay components on them. So there's a couple components that are being developed for the character side. Did you want to talk at all about any one of those?
Well, I mean, for like the first thing we did, taking what like originally CryEngine Camps is like what you said, like the static character definition file, like split each piece out, and we just made them items, so they're interchangeable. And we already had the item pod system for ships, so we just took the same thing and basically made, okay, those pieces which you usually define in one static file are now just items which you put together, and that allows us to give each item different game values. So for example, for our chest pieces, we give them different mass values, and then the game code just takes the overall mass of your attached items, and then that calculates how fast you run. So now we more like a small weapon, this type of armor or glass, whatever. With this system now, we can basically build like, okay, if you have a heavy armor, it's obviously slow, but you can carry like the bigger and heavier weapons. And that all works because we have like componentized all those into items.
Right. And then on the performance front, that's a better thing because again, we can do scheduler updates type thing. We can that they're not all updating all the time. It's all very controllable.
Yes, and then still for our characters, still even if they are like now split into different items, we under the hood we're using the skin mechanics, which basically is still on the rendering side. We merge everything into one skin, and like, since they all use the same material, we even if it's split like in logical items, on the rendering side it's still one thing which we can draw in like one go, so it's still very optimal.
Right, this unified C-render
Yes.
proxy piece of the character size, or distance, or an average poly size. And if they're all sort of popping and doing things at different rates, what happens is on those edges that you talked is that the helmets were separate. These were a bone attachment, right? So, and I'm sure people have seen this within Star Marine, is that they're shooting at those joints. They'll shear off basically those duplication of joints and just extend it to the new one. So what this gives us the ability to do is modify the skeleton hierarchy itself at runtime, meaning I put that chest piece on and all of a sudden I've got a new joint with that new
1 armor piece which has like whatever, like 2 bones here for attachment for grenades, and then another armor piece which has them here, and it still works, and we don't have to carry like 4 bones for that. It's still 2 bones, but they are different.
If I was to say attach a cape to a character, that cape is going to need bone chains, and it's probably going to need a good, 5 bone chains across, probably 10 long. That's a lot of joints all of a sudden to be carrying around on your base skeleton. But if you can attach it with the asset that's coming in, you've saved that much off your base skeleton. So that's where we really abuse it, is when that simulation comes into play.
And the modularity even helps more with that, because like what you just said, with modules, each piece can come with its own collider zone. So you can make like a very fat, whatever, chest piece, which just comes with its own collider zone, and then the cape will still work and collide with that, and will collide different with that like big heavy chest versus like a thin light chest piece. So.
Sure. And we abuse this on not just things like capes, things like hair. And the Homestead demo was one of the best usages I think of it that we've had so far. So definitely an interesting thing.
We're really excited about the degree of variety this tech is going to bring our players. Wanted to leave you guys with a little bit of a video showing off some of the features. So thanks again, and thanks for watching.
And we'll see you around the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.